So tonight we are doing Kraken Travel's Route to the Vendee Globe 2020 with Pip Hare. Kraken offer a whole range of sailing experiences, from going on a sailing ski holiday to a small racing event. And Henry and Mike are actually waiting in the wings today, just in case we have any technical issues, although hopefully we won't. If you do have any problems, please do just pop a comment in the chat box and we'll see if we can fix those for you. But let's just say, hopefully it's all gonna be okay. So I'm gonna be your host for this evening. My name is Fiona Quinn and I'm a Kraken Travel ambassador. In 2018, I stand-up paddleboarded from Land's End to John O'Groats up the west coast of Britain with a fear of the sea. So I'm kind of on the opposite extreme in terms of sailing experience to Pip, but I'm really looking forward to diving into her journey tonight and learning a lot more about what she's got to come. So just to introduce Pip a little bit to you, she's a professional skipper, a coach, a journalist and an athlete, holding 2 world-first endurance records and with over 20 years of ocean yacht racing experience. In November this year, Pip will be entering the Vendee Globe, which is the world's toughest single-handed yacht race, with the ambition of breaking the current female record of 94 days, currently held by Dame Ellen MacArthur. So without further ado, welcome Pip, really nice to have you with us.
Thank you, it's lovely to be here.
And I guess, you know, you've got a huge feat ahead of you this year. And, you know, it is the toughest professional sporting event out there, like hands down. So it's really not for the faint-hearted, is it?
No, I guess the one thing about the Vendee is, you know, in terms of a sailing event, it is as tough as you can get, because the boats are so huge and so fast, and it's non-stop single-handed around the world. But then when you look at it from an endurance sports point of view as well, it's 3 months of solid competition, and that is day and night, 24/7. And so it's unrivaled from that respect as well.
And it's unsupported too, isn't it? So you're really out there on your own in the Southern Ocean. It's quite a feat.
Yeah. There's a wonderful statistic that at some points in the Southern Ocean, you are closer to a person on the International Space Station than to a person on a continental landmass.
Wow. That is a really scary thought. But just before we dive in, because I do have so many questions I want to ask you, I kind of really want to throw a question out to the floor. So everybody at home who's watching, just to kind of get a bit of a gauge of the audience. So hopefully Mike will be able to pop up a little poll. There we go, perfect timing, thank you Mike. So this is just kind of, if everyone wants to just select an answer, just to tell us, you know, what kind of level of experience you guys have at home. Are you yourselves professional sailors, or are you sort of more on the novice side? I would certainly put myself more on the novice side. So if you all want to just put in your answers now.
Am I allowed to answer it too?
I don't think we're allowed, actually. So hopefully everyone is putting in their answers there. There's a couple of different options for you. And then once you've all put in your answers, which I think Mike's just closed the poll now. Here we go. So the most popular answer is avid yacht cruiser. A couple of professional sailors in the audience. A couple of people on my end having being a novice sailor. So it's good to kind of get a gauge of where you guys are at. And hopefully we can answer some questions that will kind of fit with what kind of information you'd be interested in. But I guess the best place to start, Pip, really is kind of explaining exactly what is the Vendee Globe, and really what lies ahead of you beyond the start line.
So the Vendee Globe is raced every 4 years. It's raced in IMOCA class yachts, which are open 60s. So they're 60 foot long. The mast can be up to 30 meters high. And the more modern ones have got foils. Mine is an old one. It's an old boat that just has a canting keel. And they can do speeds in excess of 40 knots now. So they're incredible, powerful machines. But they're specifically adapted to be sailed single-handed. The Vendee Globe race, since its start, I think we are on, gosh, I should know what edition we're on, but I don't. I think it's the 8th edition we're on. But since its start, only 87 sailors in the whole world have ever finished the race. 9 of those have been British and 6 of those have been women. So more men have walked on the moon than women and British sailors have finished the Vendee Globe.
Yeah, that's quite a number, really, isn't it? And it kind of goes to show just how kind of elite and hardcore this race is.
I think that one of the big things about it is that it's not a race that you just come into as your first step on a solo sailing ladder. It's something that everybody builds up to. It is going to some of the most remote places in the world. Not only do you need to be capable of sailing the boat, but you need to be able to do all of your own navigation, and that includes risk assessment around the weather, as well as finding your way through the weather to get the fastest route. But a lot of the race is about how you manage problems along the way, because 3 months of solid performance from one of these boats, you need to expect that things are going to break along the way. And so you need to be able to analyse, diagnose and fix all manner of problems on the boat: mechanical, electrical, computers, sail making, climbing the mast, and as well as looking after yourself. So all the time you're going to be sleep deprived, because the boats are going so fast, the environment's changing so quickly, that I would not normally sleep for longer than 30 minutes at a time. Wow. And in an average 24-hour period, obviously I would aim to gain as much sleep as I could, but I might go for only having 4 hours in a 24-hour period if things are pretty intense and I need to be on it. So you've got to be really self-aware, you've got to be good at self-regulation, manage your own diet, your hydration, and then also look after yourself from a medical side of things as well. So self-diagnose, self-treat any medical problems. So it's a really holistic sport. You're asking for a person to perform at every level that a human being needs to exist. You're pushing that to the limits, but that's what attracts me to it as a sport, really, because it just asks so much of an individual.
It's incredible, really, the range of skills that you need to have to be able to just get through it, really, yet alone to then race on top of that and to be going after the female world record is incredible.
Yeah, I guess it's layers and levels, and so I think one of the really interesting aspects of it is how you manage your objectives while you're out there, because objective number 1 always just has to be to finish. Just by finishing, you will have achieved something absolutely incredible, and then with that objective in mind, you then take risks that will dictate how hard you want to push, what sort of performance you believe you're capable of in any one moment, how much risk you want to take. So it's always changing, and there are some just incredible stories that come out of the race. So Alan Wara, who had my boat in the last race, he broke a rudder in the Southern Ocean and went over the side and replaced the rudder in the Southern Ocean and carried on racing. And at that point he had to change his objectives and his aspirations, but what he did arguably was more incredible than anybody who could have sailed a easy straight race and got into the finish and got a top 10 finish. For it really pulls out these incredible stories of I guess human enterprise and ability.
I think it's really important to kind of realize that it's the Southern Ocean. This isn't an easy section to sail. This is the hardest part that you could go on, isn't it?
Well, yes, and I'm very blithely saying Southern Ocean, Southern Ocean, Southern Ocean, but I've never been in the Southern Ocean. So.
Does that scare you, the idea of going there and facing, you know, everything that comes with that enormity of
It does.
being there?
I think it's an interesting concept. The whole scared thing is an interesting concept, because yes, I know I'm going to be terrified down there, and I know I will probably spend every day I'm down there wishing I wasn't there. But I'm not scared of doing it, because, you know, arguably if I was scared of doing it, I wouldn't be doing it. So my rationale behind going down there on my own in that boat is I'm going to have a really well prepared boat, and I'm going to know every inch of it. I'm training myself to be able to do all the things that I need to do to a good enough standard to look after myself. You know, I've got all of the things, all the skills that I've needed to build up to be able to survive down there or to perform down there. I've invested in. I've spent 11 years building up to this point. And I think if I was really, really scared of going down there, then arguably it wouldn't be the right time. But that's not to say I don't give it the absolute full respect that it's due. And I know how hard it's going to be. And I know that I will be terrified. But I've got the right boat and I'm ready. So
yeah, I guess that's the most important thing, is to have done the training and to prepared and to have built up to it, and then that will allow you to take on what is going to be an incredible challenge. But yeah. I think at this point I would love to just kind of jump back a little bit, and, you know, you say it's kind of 11 years in the making, and I kind of almost want to go back even further and be like, well, how did you get into sailing? Did you start as a child, and kind of what was your journey into becoming a professional sailor?
I sailed when I was a child. I grew up in East Anglia, completely landlocked. But when I was little, my grandfather had a boat, and then when he passed away, my parents inherited that boat. It was a little wooden folk boat, 24-foot folk boat. And so when I was a kid, I mean, I've been on boats from a very, very early age. I think there's a picture of me on a boat when I was 1. And so, but that for me was not sailing as such. It was being on a boat. We had family holidays on a boat, and for us it was more about being in the water than on the water. But it was an environment that I was familiar with, but not particularly engaged with. And then in my teens, I went on a sailing holiday without my family, and it was a sailing scheme that was run by young people for young people. And it just absolutely resonated with me, because at that age, in your mid-teens, when you're sort of old enough to want freedom and responsibility, but too young to be given it, sailing gives all of that to young people. You can have your own boat, you get put in control of it, you get to make your own decisions, you do the driving, you know, it's all of this responsibility and freedom. And it absolutely resonated with me, and I was hooked on sailing as a sport from then. And then from that moment, I had worked either end of my school day. You know, I got as many jobs as I could. I saved up all of the money that I earned so that I could afford a train ticket to go to the coast, and then I did as much sailing as I could, just sort of self-funding, but always on big boats, not really anything to do with dinghies, nothing to do with racing. And again, at that time, I started then to read sailing magazines, and it was then that I first started reading about offshore sailing. I was a massive fan of Peter Blake. He was one of my heroes. I mean, obviously I read about Maiden, and then I started to read about solo ocean racing, and the Vendee Globe race, first edition of the Vendee Globe race, and the BOC challenge that went before it, and was suddenly aware that, I mean, other than Maiden, which was totally isolated, you know, all of my offshore heroes, they were just men. And then you find the Vendee Globe, and it's really, really hard, and there's men and women competing on equal terms, and nobody seems to bat an eyelid. And it's not all the women's team over there, aren't they doing well? They're just all competitors, and they're doing what looked like the most audacious race in the world. And I read about it, and from that moment I was just like, I want to do that. But I had no idea how to at all, none. And in the UK there is no pathway, there's no roadmap there, you know, especially then in the 90s, living in Huntingdon in the middle of East Anglia, you know, so I kind of, and this has been my whole life basically. I've had to map it all out for myself. And so the first thing I did, I left school. I decided I wanted to work in the sailing industry. I wanted to be a sailor, so I just went down to the south coast. I found a sailing school. I got an apprenticeship at the sailing school. I got my yacht masters. I became a professional skipper, and then that was it really. I ended up going all over the world, living in various different countries. I tried just about everything, you know, deliveries, teaching, charters, super yachts, the works. Always kind of looking for the opportunity to get into solo sailing. And during all this time, this is when Anna MacArthur did her trip around Britain, and then she did the mini transat, and then she did the Vendee, and I was looking at all of that just going, how did she do it? How did that happen for her and not for me? And I think the problem was that I wasn't, and still am not, a massively confident person. And I was looking for somebody to show me the way. I was looking for someone to open up the opportunity for me, you know, looking for a course or a scheme or something, the door. And I didn't realise really until my mid-30s that there was no door. And this was something I was going to have to do on my own. And so in my mid-30s, I did my first ever solo voyage, which was from Uruguay to the UK, 7,500 miles, 58 days, ran out of food. Took me 2 years to build weight back up again because I lost so much weight. I looked like I just got out of a coffin when I got to the other side.
Oh gosh.
But that was it basically. From there, you know, it's always just these building blocks. You know, the first building block was, right, can I actually do this? Can I sail a boat on my own across an ocean? Tick, yes I can. Did I enjoy it? Tick, yes I did. Can I race now? Do I have the wherewithal to push hard, to take those risks? So I took that boat and I did the All-Star, and I loved it, but I broke my rigging in the All-Star, so I didn't get the result that I'd hoped. I sailed back again, so 3 transatlantics in that boat in that year, and then the next year, you know, well, can I win something? So I did double-handed round Britain and Ireland, and we won it overall. And then, okay, well, what's the next step? Where do I go next? And that was to the mini transats, because it was a big fleet, huge competition, the level was right up there, but also you're starting to really then learn the techniques that take you up into the bigger boats. So 2 mini transats, and then that really inspired me to start getting into other endurance sports. So I started endurance running then as well, and we got into the 3 peaks, and here we are now. I've got a ridiculously big boat.
It's an amazing story, and I think it's really interesting in terms of that, you know, process of starting off and seeing the equality of the Vendee, and seeing both men and women competing on equal terms, and then kind of the lack of as you called it, like a pathway of how do you get there, how do you move forward. And I think seeing people you know, doing what you want to do is so important in being able to visualize yourself doing it, and knowing that there's a way of getting there. And I guess that's realizing that there isn't always that opportunity to see someone doing that, or to have opportunities sort of placed in front of you, and you have to kind of go out there and find them yourself. That's kind of, it's a really, I think, important lesson. And it's kind of, for me, when I realized that, you know, you don't necessarily have someone guiding you, you have to find your own way. That's kind of quite freeing, that you can set the parameters and where you go next. And, you know, as you say, you're building up step by step to build on that race experience. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's empowering and it's liberating, and actually, you know, one of the things that I love about solo sailing is that it's I mean, I think it's such a sort of binary experience, because whatever you do impacts you directly and nobody else. So if you want to make the boat go faster, you have to put the effort in to make the boat go faster. And if you just want to kick back, well, there's nobody there to know, you know, what you're doing on board. They don't know why you're going slow. They don't know you're going slow because you're not trying, which is never me, by the way. I'm just going slow. I'm normally trying really hard and going slow. But equally, if you make a mistake, it's your mistake. You own that mistake. You turn it around. You fix it. And I think, you know, when you create these pathways for yourself, it's like with you and your length of Britain Triathlon, you know, you created that for yourself. You were doing it for yourself. No one was holding you to account. You took all responsibility, but you also then take all of the glory, and you deserve it. And I think that's a really great feeling to be able to do that. But it does take quite a lot of, you have to take a risk to do it. It does take quite a lot of effort to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so at what point did you decide, you know, you feel like you're ready, you're going to go for the Vendee and you're going to make it happen?
Well, in truth, you know, if you look at Pip Hare sponsorship brochures through the ages, I was going for the Vendee straight after the All-Star, you know, because it's a really hard thing to make happen on a number of levels. So one is, obviously you need to have the experience, and you need to gain a place in the race. You know, there's only, this year's, we've got the biggest entry this year ever, so the race places have gone up to 34 places, but over 100 people registered for places. I mean, they've whittled down, but you know, you don't just get a place. So there's that aspect of it. There's the fact that you need a boat, you know, and this is a 60-foot state-of-the-art ocean race boat. You know, they don't come cheap. So, you know, somehow you've got to get a boat, you've got to buy it, you've got to charter it, you've got to find the funds to get the boat, you've got to find the infrastructure to support you with the boat. And then, of course, you know, you need sponsorship. Very few people could independently fund something like this, and so you need sponsorship, and to get the sponsorship, you know, you've got to have this whole credibility, so that people are happy to invest in you. And so in terms of whether you're ready or not to do the race, I think just being a good sailor is only a tiny part of the equation. And I after the All-Star, if somebody had given me the cash, then of course I would have had a go at a Vendee. But you know, I am so much more the right kind of sailor now than I ever was then. And I think probably 4 years ago I was ready to do this, you know, at the start of this cycle, but I just couldn't see how it was going to happen, because I had no idea how on earth I could find the sponsorship. I could convince a company to invest in me so that I could find the boat, and it's kind of like a chicken and an egg thing. It's like, if you don't have a boat, then you don't actually have a project. So people are investing in an idea, and to get people to invest in an idea is really, really hard. But if you don't have the boat that makes the project the reality, then, you know, it's really hard. But I had 2 years ago, so I was late into it. My campaign's only been running since the beginning of 2019. I was really late into it. And basically in the middle of 2018, an opportunity came to charter an old IMOCA. and it was a really cheap charter fee, and it was an affordable charter fee. And I just saw the opportunity. I thought, okay, this is the only chance I'm going to get. I'll have to fundraise as I go along. I will just have to make this work. But this is my opportunity. And so I took it.
Amazing. And I think that's that, like, it's getting to the start line. That is like a huge challenge in itself, yet alone what's ahead of you beyond there. And just kind of, you know, listening to your story about how you had to really fight to find the right boat and to find funding. Like, I think that for me in itself is really inspirational, you know, and then the race on top of that is incredible. And, you know, you're still fundraising at the moment. You've got your Just Giving page, which is still live. And so how do you, you know, kind of deal with that mental challenge of pre-race, of, you know, getting everything together, continuing to believe in yourself, you know, to make sure that you get everything you need in place beforehand?
I mean, it is really tough. And this last year of my life has been just off the scale in terms of how hard it's been. I've run my entire campaign alone, with the support of volunteers. And, you know, the people that I am competing against, when I turn up to a race, the people I'm competing against have teams. You know, some of them have got 20 people in their teams. And I really have done everything myself, all of my project management, all the boat maintenance, you know, learning to sail the boat. I didn't know how to sail on a mocker at the beginning of this year. It's just managing everything has been extraordinary, and it's been at times utterly overwhelming, you know. And I've had these moments where I've just been paralyzed by the volume of things that I need to do and I need to get done, and I'm terrified of dropping a ball. But you just, in a way, it's been a metaphor for exactly what it's like on the water, because there's so many things to do, and you just have to really, really prioritize. You know, my job lists are running out the front door. You know, there are so many jobs, but in any given day, I have to get up in the morning and say, well, what is the most important thing that I do today? And what I've learned through the year is that actually, you know, I started out the year just so utterly focused on the boat and the campaign and what is the most important thing. And I actually forgot that I'm part of this as well. You know, if you were looking at the project assets or whatever, you know, I actually exist too. And I, you know, just before my first race, my first ever solo race, which was in May, I just ran myself down to just such a sort of a half person, just kind of walking around doing what I needed to do. And then in amongst all of that, you look at the stress that I was putting myself under, and you just think, why are you doing this to yourself? But I went sailing on that first race, and I started, and I was really in awe of, you know, I was on a start line with people who I've read about in magazines for years, people who I'm in utter awe of. I was very aware that I turned up in an old boat that was a bit shabby looking, and I had my mates helping me sort it out, and everyone was in their shiny kit, and I kind of had really mixed feelings about whether I should be there and whether I belonged. And I was knackered, just so knackered. But we started the race, and all of that just goes away because I love what I do so much, and I'm so driven to do it, and I love the way it makes me feel. And that's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I want to take part in the hardest sailing race in the world. And I'm doing it because the place I feel most at home is in the middle of an ocean, and it pushes me to the absolute limits, but it gives me the greatest reward ever, and that is like a drug.
That's wonderful that you found that, and you know, you're pushing for it and you're going after it. I love that. And so, you talked about, looking after yourself is so important in the prep for this. So what kind of training have you had to do? Have you done any specific training for being out in the Southern Ocean, or, any particular elements of the race?
Well, it's interesting. So I've gone through different phases on the boat. So in terms of just the boat sailing, I went through 3 distinct phases last year, because I had to, I said I started the year and I'd never actually sailed on an IMOCA ever. So I had to start the year, and in that year, my objectives were to finish every IMOCA race, because that was what was going to gain me my place in the Vendee Globe, to work my way through stages of learning to performance, because although I've got an old boat, I am competing in this race. I'm competing. I'm not just taking part, and that's really important to me. Is that I love the competitive aspect of sailing, and I want to push my boat as hard as I possibly can. So it was important to me that I learned a lot about the performance aspects of my boat as well. And so I started out just trying to learn the basics on manoeuvres and handling the boat itself, because actually I'm really comfortable with sailing in a straight line. That's no problem at all. And once the sails are up, it actually is quite easy just to carry on going. So what was important to me was learning to deal with the really heavy loads. One of the issues with my boat, because it's an older boat, is everything is really, really heavy, and I don't have a coffee grinder. Everything is top grind winches. So my heaviest sail is 90 kilos, and that's when it's dry. So learning to manage all of those loads, learning to manage a boat that big and that powerful on my own, that was my first 2 months, was just make mistakes, lots of learning, and I did that by getting loads and loads of people involved. So all of my friends who solo sail came out with me. Everyone had ideas, but we all made mistakes. There were many hands there to stop mistakes escalating, but their learning and my learning combined to this rapid 2 months of just getting the basics done. And at the end of that, I was good enough to go out and sail 2,000 miles solo in the Bermuda 1000. And then after that, I really wanted to start pushing my comfort zone, but also trying to get an idea of how competitive the boat could be, what we could do to improve the boat, how to get it faster. And I absolutely lucked out on that with sailing with Paul Larson, who's the world speed sailing record holder, an incredible guy, really inquisitive, really positive. And he and I did the Fastnet together, and he helped me with a lot of tweaks on the boat, just to get the most out of what I had, but also just his attitude to this general attitude that you can always do better, you can always make the boat go faster, that relentless scanning of what's going on. That was a really, really great to have a mentor like that, and that helped me. And then the final phase of the year really was kind of taking that and pushing it over a longer term, because my final race of the year was to Brazil, from France to Brazil. But it sort of got turned on its head a bit, because my co-skipper broke his arm before 2 weeks, 2 weeks it was before the start of the race. I had to change co-skippers at the last minute. And so actually, rather than that phase of learning being more about performance over time, it actually turned out being adjusting and adapting and coping with stress and anxiety and last minute changes, which I think is probably more valuable, probably.
Yeah, awesome. And so it's great to hear about all of those kind of stages that you've gone through. And I guess you talked about improving the boat. Have you had to do a lot to get the boat ready? Is it nearly ready now? Like, what kind of stage are you at with the boat?
So the boat was, when I picked it up, the boat was in good condition, and it's strong and it's solid. And on a really base level, then it can go around the world again, that's fine. And in terms of improvements, that's so budget related. So I have a list of things that I would like to achieve before November that will help improve performance, either by making the boat easier for me to sail, or replacing sails, or upgrading electronics. But at a base level, I've got a boat that works and can go around again. And actually, it is for its age, it's quite a fast boat. You have to push it hard. This is what I've learned. You have to push that boat hard, and if you push it hard, it goes. So we are mid refit, because that's what you do. If you're going to take a boat to the Southern Ocean, then you take every part of it apart, you inspect it, and then you put it back together. So we are mid refit at the moment. We're aiming to launch on the week commencing the 8th of June. So COVID basically delayed the refit by 2 months. Everyone just had to walk off the job mid-job, and I had stuff stuck in France, and it just, everything was all
really hard.
Yeah. It's been really hard because because everything just slowed down and stopped, and although on a day-to-day basis things haven't changed too much for me, because my workplace is in the shed, and I've still had access to the shed, so I've been going in. It's just that nobody else really has been going in, so I've been doing it on my own. And although sometimes it may seem futile, I literally have during COVID I had a boat in bits. There was nothing left on it. The keel was off, the rudders were off, all the deck gear was off. We were supposed to be spray painting it. It was just a bare hull and all the bits around it, and I would just go in every day and do something. And it probably seems like the most futile of gestures, because it's going to take me a year to assemble this boat again on my own. But just mentally, it was so good for me to know that I was positively moving forwards every day, and it was only a tiny bit, but it helped me get through. And this week, during COVID, we sort of worked out that the guys who were spraying the boat, they worked out how they could work, and so things started to roll again slowly, just at a reduced rate. And then this week we've been able to bring the old crew back in again, and we're starting to stick things back on again, which is just amazing.
Must be a relief. I just know you're going again.
I just want to go sailing.
Oh, fingers crossed soon. And I guess that's kind of another part of it, isn't really your team? So you say you've got volunteers that are supporting you. What kind of team have you managed to get yourself?
Amazing. They are all amazing. I am constantly so blown away by how, I put something out on Facebook and I say, does somebody want to come and do a really rubbish, dirty, awful job this weekend? And they do. And these are people I don't know. Yeah. Just turn up and they help, and it's been incredible. So I've had all sorts of support, on a really practical level. People who are more local to Paul have been able to come down, and for example, when the boat went into refit, I needed to take all of the sails off, and I had about 10 people turned up, and some guy bought a really big truck, and we got all the sails off, we got the boom off, the sails all went up to a factory, they got inspected, they got slabbed up for the sail makers. These are jobs that everyone else, competing, they have a crew, a team, a paid team that do this stuff for them. And if I'd have tried to do that on my own, it probably would have taken me a week. So many hands make light work, for sure. But I've also had people helping me with PR and marketing. So Mike has done race comms with me through the race, and you just get all people have come. I've shown the boat at boat shows, and people have come and spent time as volunteers showing people around my boat and telling them about what I'm doing. It's just never ending, the support and the ways in which people are offering help to me. It's so humbling. It really is.
That's amazing. It's so nice to have that. I guess it must be such a boost in confidence. You know, you're bound to be having like low days sometimes and to be struggling with things, but then to know that you've got that almost endless sort of, you know, stream of people who are willing to step in and help you at every turn is amazing.
It's incredible. It comes with a responsibility though as well, because, you know, I'm so aware of the fact that, you know, they've donated time and they've donated money, and I just need to make sure that I flipping well do the best I can with it. It's a responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. So I just kind of want to, I know that we're kind of, you know, coming towards the end now. I just wanted to throw some questions in from the audience. I've got some pre-questions that were sent in, but I've also see that we've got some in the Q&A just here. So I just spotted one here from Lucy and Sid. It says, who is your sponsor from Sid age 12?
So I have a number of sponsors at the moment. I don't have a title sponsor. I'm still looking for a title sponsor. But basically the way I set my campaign up was it initially kickstarted with a crowdfund, and then I developed a business syndicate, which is sort of like a club that smaller businesses can join, and they pay a monthly fee, and they get an experiential return. So they don't get branding on the boat, but I do events and they can invite their clients down to events, and we have a newsletter and they get media, and I do schools talks for them. But the idea is everybody in the club shares that return. So that kind of gave me a drumbeat of monthly income, which allowed me to progress through the year. And then I have bigger partners on top of that. So Poole Harbour commissioners provide me with the infrastructure, so my berth and the cranes and all that sort of thing. There's a company called WQI who are supporting me with labour and a home for my refit. And then I have a local computer company called Codestone. And a couple of weeks ago, I signed a bronze level sponsor, a company called Yonder, who build data warehouses. So it's great to have them on board for sure.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Okay, got another question here. Do you think being a woman has made it more difficult to get the required funding for this enterprise? That's from Ian.
That's a difficult question, and I think it is difficult, full stop. Being a woman, I don't know that it's, I think in some respects it is harder because it's just not, we're still not particularly associated with really hardcore ocean racing. And so I think that makes it difficult on one level around your credibility and your visibility. But in general, I think as a British sailor, it's hard to get funding.
Yeah. And do you think being a woman has kind of made it harder to get to this point in the first place of being in a position to enter the race?
Undoubtedly. Yeah. I mean, within the world of solo sailing, not so much, because it is just so finite. You know, you get a boat and off you go, and you can either do it or you can't do it. But sailing in general, offshore sailing, bigger boat sailing, that's really, really hard, being a woman, and actually being an older woman as well. And I'm 46. So being an older woman is hard because you just get automatically written off. People don't even consider what you might be able to offer. And I've worked in the sailing industry my whole life. And when I started out as a skipper at the age of 18, there were 2 other female skippers on the Salent. And now, I can't do the maths, it's nearly 30 years later, that demographic has not actually changed that much. I think offshore sailing as a whole needs to really reflect and understand why more women aren't getting involved. I think one of the great things about Kraken, for example, and other adventurous sailing holidays is that, you know, they do offer a platform where women feel comfortable going and getting involved, and they offer an inlet in. But in general, women are so underrepresented in this sport, and it's a shame, because sailing, I am really passionate about the fact that sailing is a sport for everyone. But you know, I haven't really understood where these barriers are. I think, but there definitely are. It's tough.
Yeah, it's such a shame that, you know, women don't have the same access, and there's kind of, I guess it's similar in a lot of walks of life, that women are kind of underrated, I guess. But as you say, particularly the more extreme kind of sports element of it. Yeah, I think it's a real shame, and hopefully there'll be some changes, you know, that come over the next.
I really hope that you know, in the Vendee Globe this year we have 6 women taking part, which is phenomenal. If you compare the Vendee Globe to offshore sailing as a whole, it's a massive overrepresentation at that level, which is incredible. Yeah. And I really hope that, you know, we as a collective of kick-ass sailor women will inspire other women to believe they belong there, and will inspire men to believe that women belong there and give them more opportunities, because it'd be so much better if we all did it together, other than solo sailing.
It would, absolutely. Yeah, that would be awesome. Brilliant. Okay, cool. So a couple of other questions we've got here. Let's have a look at some of the ones that were submitted beforehand. What's your favourite geographical part of the race, from Steve?
Well, obviously I haven't been in the Southern Ocean, so don't know. I know the route down the Atlantic so well. And you know, I think you can't beat a bit of trade wind sailing, really, when it's really good. That's pretty unbelievable. But I think going past Cape Horn to port on the way back out the Southern Ocean and back out the Atlantic. So I have done, I've sailed all the way down that South American coast a couple of times, and I think it's probably going to be the most incredible feeling, just Cape Horn to port. You know, you're on the home stretch, you're out of the Southern Ocean. I think, ask me when I get back.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, and there's one here from Victoria. She says, what would you recommend to a 17-year-old girl who loves sailing and wants to develop a career in sailing?
So get your qualifications for sure. Go and do a course and get your yacht masters, because, you know, if you want a career in sailing, then that's a really good place to start. And also just access to boats is the hardest thing, and I think my advice is, don't be prepared to do any job on a boat. Don't go into it thinking you only want to do this, but go on a boat, get an opportunity to sail, and then just be indispensable. And that's kind of what I always did when I first got into racing. You know, of course I wanted to be up there trimming the spinnaker. I didn't, you know, but if the bilges needed mopping out, I went and did it. You know, if there was sandwiches need to be passed up, I went and did it. And sometimes, you know, there was a bit of me that said, oh, you know, I'm just a girl and the girl does it. But actually, you know, you need to, I think by showing how willing and keen and eager you are, by being the one who's prepared to go up to the front when it's freezing cold and there's heaps of water coming over, you know, you're showing people all the time, A, that you're capable, but B, that you also have an aptitude for doing anything at all, and that is a really good skill.
Getting stuck in is definitely a brilliant way to learn as well, and kind of get all the knowledge and experience that you need. Sounds fantastic. Okay, so we have for a question from Liz in the chat here. Do you take a luxury item on board?
Well, I guess probably, I mean, I love music, so waterproof speaker is probably the luxury item that I take. And, you know, I have several tea mugs because I love tea. But I mean, other than that, I just, you know, you become almost so robotic. Your existence is quite primal. You just do, it's about need, not about want. Yeah. If you ever get into the stage of thinking about things that you want, then there's something that needs to be done. So
I guess that's kind of that's a quite kind of part of the mental element of it, I guess, isn't it? Like when you're out there and you're on your own for so long and it's such tough conditions and you're so sleep deprived and hungry, and I guess having a little bit of music is a great way to help, you know, if you're feeling that you need something to comfort you, but at the same time you can still get on with stuff. And
it's so it helps me focus. I have always got a soundtrack to my good times. You know, I think it brings on, if things are really, really good and then you have some good music on as well, it just enhances the euphoria around it. You know, I think it can distract you from negative thought trains. It can change your mood instantly. And also it ties me to the people that I love as well, because so all of my friends are making me Vendee playlists. And that is, I know that is going to be so special for me. I'm going to love it because it's, you know, music is so important to so many people and it's so personal. So yeah, there's many different ways that it makes life better.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, I've got another question here. I think a couple of people have been asking, in terms of the dangers, would there be other sort of big boats, sort of shipping containers, that sort of thing that you'll have to dodge along the way?
Yes, I mean there is, you know, there's stuff in the ocean, and especially with the foiling boats, there's more incidents of people hitting things. My boat doesn't have foils, and so it's less of a risk for me. And it's difficult, you know, with hitting a container. Yes, it could happen, but I have no way of stopping it from happening, because, you know, there isn't the forward-facing technology that can deal with the sort of speeds that we do at the moment. They are developing a system. I think it's called Oscar, I think. So they're trying to get a system of cameras that look forward, that can cope with the speed, and they're trialing it on some of the real top boats. Like I think Chirao is trialing it. So, I mean, in that respect, you just have to really rationalise how likely is it that this is going to happen. You know, and there is an element of just having faith that it's not going to happen. And if it does happen, well, you have to deal with it there and then. But I think the problem is that because there is so little you can do about it, if you let it become something that really brings you anxiety or you're worried about, then you would never go, really. You know, I think one of the biggest things that I'm concerned about is breaking a bone. I think that would be one of the worst things that could happen, and it has happened before. So Jan Ellis broke his femur, and so, you know, that's part of my risk assessment always. You know, quite often you will see me, I commando crawl up the deck, you know, rather than risk falling over. You know, I'm always hanging on to stuff, and I do fall. I get bashed, I get knocked. So I'm actively risk assessing that all the time. And then the other thing that absolutely scares the whoopee out of me is climbing the mast. It is terrifying. It is the most awful thing you could possibly ask yourself to do. but I need to have it in my mindset that I am going to have to do that at least once. So the way to deal with that is practice. I practice on the dock, using the kit, so that I've got the muscle memory, so the technique is there. So when I'm paralysed with fear, my arms and my legs know what to do.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty scary part. I guess just before we wrap up, is there anything else, I guess, that we've not touched on that you think somebody out there would love to hear, or that, you know, that you want to share with us?
No, I think just going back to our earlier conversation about, you know, finding the way in and where do you go and what do you do, and you know, I've had, since I've started doing this year, I've had a lot of people, young and older, emailing me and asking for advice, and you know, one of the things that I am really keen to do is to share my journey, because maybe I would have started a bit earlier if I'd have, you know, had more of a steer on how to do it or where to go. And I want to share the, you know, it's not all glamour. I want to share the nuts and the bolts of it, so that other people can maybe get the idea that they could do it themselves, just the inspiration and maybe the encouragement to take the first step. So yeah, I think, you know, if people feel that they want some advice or anything like that, I don't expect an immediate answer, but I'm quite happy to answer emails.
Brilliant. And so you on social media, how can people kind of get hold of you and follow your journey along the way?
Yes, thank you. I'm not very good at self-promotion. So I am on, oh yes, I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Pip Hare Ocean Racing. And then I have a website, which is piphareoceanracing.com, and a YouTube channel, which is not, I haven't got too much on there at the moment, but as the year goes on, I'm going to put more and more on the YouTube channel, and as we go through the Vendee, you know, most of my reportage back will be videos. So yeah, you can find me on there, and if you can like and share, it makes my life so much better.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to sponsor you too, you've got your Just Giving link, is that right?
Yes, it's a GoFundMe page, and on my website, piphareoceanracing.com, there is a big red button that says donate, and every single penny goes into my boat.
Fantastic. And I believe that Mike and Henry, they're going to put around an email to everybody that's been listening tonight or that watches this on catch up. I'm sure there'll be a link in there too, so that they can sponsor you that way. And find out more information. And also, obviously, if any businesses, anyone who runs their own business is watching and wants to sponsor, I'm sure that you would love to hear from them as well.
Yeah, we've got
it's been really yeah. It's been so lovely speaking to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
And also thank you to Kraken Travel, who has been sponsoring tonight, and they do lots of amazing sailing experiences. So if you want it, anybody watching wants to get into sailing, go on a sailing ski holiday or do some yacht racing, they're a brilliant way of doing that. I've been your host, Fiona Quinn, and I hope you've all enjoyed tonight. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening and watching. Thanks so much.
Thank you.